I think she's probably been put in there because, according to Donald Trump, she's a 10. You know that's what it is.
I want to be clear, though. It's not her first job. It was her first press briefing. She worked in the previous Trump administration.
Because she said something yesterday that really pissed me off. And that was, she said, there will be no wokeness here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me explain something to you. Because without that wokeness, you might not have that job.
Yeah.
Because women were not invited to that table. Mm-hmm. Women were not invited to many tables in this nation. The reason we fought and busted our behinds to make sure that you didn't have to worry about this. You know, or at least people of a certain age know. And it's like, wow, but look at what she did. It's all about books, all about history, all about reading. Remember reading and history and books?
Yeah.
Yeah. We love them, but we'll keep bringing them back as often as we can.
My team will review the applications and give credentials to new media applicants who meet our criteria and pass United States Secret Service requirements to enter the White House complex.
All right.
What'd she say?
These women are completely out of touch with reality. And you're right, ABC should wake up.
Now unloading all their nasty attacks on rising Trump White House star and new press secretary, Karoline Leavitt. Watch this.
She's probably been put in there because, according to Donald Trump, she's...
So picture this, the camera cuts in, and the room is dead silent right there. At the center of it all is Whoopi Goldberg, blinking fast, lips trembling, gripping the table like it's the only thing keeping her grounded. But this isn't the View, nope. This is a courtroom. And this time the tables have seriously turned.
There's too much BS floating out there, and now it's out of our hands. There's no way to control it, so now they're saying they're going to control it. I want to see what they're going to do. I want to see who they're going to invite into this, because quite honestly, I like when we're held to standards. I don't always like the way they do it, but we have to have ourselves.
But they have been wrong about everything they have said over the last couple of years.
Joy Behar calls her a 10. I mean, how dare she objectify a woman?
Usually Whoopi is the one dishing out snarky takes and bold opinions on national TV. But today she's the one being called out, and the person behind this twist, Karoline Leavitt. She's young, sharp, and completely unapologetic. And she's just pulled a move nobody saw coming. She took Whoopi to court and made her answer for everything, and yet she brought receipts. So what really went down, stay until the end to find out.
Because black people couldn't get into colleges. Because women could not get into the colleges they wanted to go to. This is all women. Yeah. See, this is not black, Asian women. This is all women. Women were not invited to this party. It was a man's world, and we busted our asses to make sure.
They were going to give unqualified
God, how boring.
unqualified
people. Can they get somebody there not
the
so
Behind
tedious?
the Table podcast needs to apply for White House credentials. They'd love having Joy in that room.
I got a question. So wait a second. So in other words, instead of Bob Woodward, they want Kim Kardashian? What? I don't get it.
You should be able to answer any question instantly, straight from the heart, on your fundamental basic principles. Maybe you need to fill in some of the specific detail at a later point, but you should be able to tell the truth on any single issue.
Absolutely not. Let me be unequivocally clear about that. And watching this clip, I couldn't help but think how ironic that Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar and the rest of the ladies on The View spend their time calling Republicans the conspiracy theorists. But they have been wrong about everything they have said over the last couple of years. These women are completely out of touch with reality. And you're right, ABC should wake up. They just paid $15 million to President Trump's future library. That's a great thing for the American people.
It all started during a typical segment on The View. You know the setup: a circle of co-hosts, one guest, and a few not so subtle political jabs disguised as late conversation. But this time things got personal. Joy Behar threw the first punch, brushing off Karoline's rise in politics like it was all about her looks. Then Whoopi chimed in saying, people like Karoline just talk endlessly when they've got nothing real to say, and claiming her success was thanks to wokeness. Sunny added her voice too, calling Karoline's entire career an example of white privilege in action.
press briefing. She worked in the previous Trump administration.
What everyone's saying, this is the first time
I think
that she's been she may be, but my point is that job would not maybe have been open to her.
No, I understand. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
Today was the first press conference for Donald Trump's press secretary, Karoline Leavitt. And if you assume she was a pretty white lady with a noticeable cross necklace, you were right. And of course she was Trump's press secretary during the campaign, but that was all about trashing Joe Biden. Now she's in an elevated position representing the White House, and she's here to talk about what the administration is going to do moving forward.
When Joe Biden was in the Oval Office or upstairs in the residence sleeping, I'm not so sure.
Oh, shit! Didn't you see that coming, did you, old man, huh?
The crowd laughed. The hosts were clearly having fun. But Karoline, she didn't flinch. She stayed quiet, collected her thoughts. And just a few days later, she hit back in a way nobody expected. She filed a defamation lawsuit. And not just a small one, we're talking $800 million. Let that sink in. And she didn't just stop with Whoopi Goldberg. Even the network itself, ABC, were all named in the lawsuit. Karoline's claim was simple. This wasn't just criticism. It was targeted, deliberate, a pattern of media bullying meant to tear her down for having a different point of view. While most celebrities would have clapped back online or posted a spicy tweet, Karoline went straight to court. She gathered clips, quotes, behind-the-scenes notes, everything she needed to make her case.
She's probably been put in there because, according to Donald Trump, she's a 10. You know that's what it is.
I want to be clear, though. It's not her first job. It was her first press briefing. She worked in the previous Trump administration.
She wasn't just defending her name. She was setting a new standard and shaking up one of the most powerful daytime shows on television while doing it. And just when everyone thought Karoline was done, she doubled down. Her legal team didn't just show up with receipts. They made a statement loud and clear. This wasn't about politics. They said it was about accountability. They believe no woman should be dragged through the mud just for having a different opinion.
There's too much BS floating out there, and now it's out of our hands. There's no way to control it. So now they're saying they're going to control it. I want to see what they're going to do. I want to see who they're going to invite into this. Because quite honestly, I like when we're held to standards. I don't always like the way they do it, but we have to have ourselves together. We can't just say stuff in spite of what they tell you. We can't just spout stuff. So I want that for everybody. And if they're going to guarantee that they're at the briefing, then I'll be.
Karoline also pointed out that she wasn't saying anything new, just repeating facts that even the other hosts had admitted in the past. And as she left the panel, one of the producers thanked her for her time, but not before she dropped one last truth bomb the women on. The View were out of touch with reality, and ABC needed to wake up. That's when it all shifted. This wasn't just a lawsuit anymore. It was war. Fast forward to this week. Inside the courtroom, Whoopi walked in with dark sunglasses and a stone-cold look. But that tough front didn't last long. Karoline's legal team came prepared. And by the time they were done laying out their case, Whoopi was falling apart. People inside the courtroom said she actually trembled as the videos played. Clips showed her making fun of Karoline's intelligence looks and even her voice. Then came the real bombshells, emails, call logs, and internal messages that showed producers knew the segment would upset Karoline, and they rolled with it anyway, just to get a reaction.
And are completely out of touch with reality. And you're right, ABC should wake up.
Now unloading all their nasty attacks on rising Trump White House star and new press secretary, Karoline Leavitt. Watch this.
She's probably been put in there because, according to Donald Trump, she's a 10.
At one point, Whoopi leaned over to whisper something to her attorney, then dropped her head into her hands. During a break, she wiped away tears. It was a shocking moment. From daytime icon to emotionally shaken defendant. Karoline, meanwhile, just sat there calm, still. She didn't brag, didn't gloat. But her silence said everything. Even people in the courtroom were impressed. All those receipts, they weren't just screenshots. Her team brought full records, months of footage, detailed transcripts, and even behind-scenes notes that showed how targeted the attacks really were. One leaked document even told producers to go after Karoline's age and throw her off balance from the start. Legal experts watching the case were floored. This wasn't just bad behavior. It looked planned. When asked about the internal notes, Whoopi said she didn't know every detail about how the show was produced, but Karoline's Lawyers didn't let that slide, she said. Ignorance doesn't count when you've got a mic in front of millions. The whole room reacted. Whoopi looked shaken, and ABC total damage control mode behind the scenes. The network was reportedly scrambling. Execs were reviewing Whoopi's contract, weighing the risks, and wondering if The View could even survive this mess. Sources say advertisers are already pulling out quietly. Ratings are dipping, and ABC's PR team, not a word. It's wild to think about. Whoopi, once seen as untouchable, is now considered a liability.
Yesterday that really pissed me off. And that was, she said, there will be no wokeness here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me explain something to you. Because without that wokeness, you might not have that job.
Yeah.
Because women were not invited to that table. Mm-hmm. Women were not invited to many tables in this nation. The reason we fought and busted our behinds to make sure that you didn't have to worry about this. And now to hear you talk about it and to hear anybody talk about the wokeness was put in place for a reason. Because black people couldn't get into colleges. Because women could not get into the colleges they wanted to go to. This is all women.
And insiders are saying something big might be coming, not just an exit plan for Whoopi, but maybe even the end of the entire show. Why? Because if Karoline wins this case, it could change everything: the way media handles public figures, the way networks protect their hosts. It could all shift to make things even more intense. Public opinion is heating up. Two critics are resurfacing clips from The View comparing Trump to Hitler, mocking him and calling him out with zero filter. But on election night, those same critics were shocked when millions of Americans voted against the narrative they were pushing.
I think that their real problem in this election, one of the real problems among the many, is the misinformation and disinformation that was disseminated on social media by these influencers and by these podcasters. Why are they qualified to sit in front in the White House briefing room and tell America what is going on with the country? Traditionally, to become a White House correspondent or to be in that briefing room, you had to have a journalism degree. Yeah. You had to have qualifications. Yeah. So I guess the rise of mediocrity is here to stay.
People are saying The View is completely disconnected from reality. Some even joke that ABC just handed $15 million to Trump's future library and called it a win for the American people. While Whoopi was crumbling under pressure, Karoline Leavitt was doing the exact opposite. She stayed calm, stuck to the facts, and held her ground like a total pro. People started to notice fast. Social media blew up with support hashtags like #Justice for Karoline and #Mediac Accountability were everywhere. Even folks who didn't always agree with her were giving props. Why? Because she was standing up to one of the biggest shows on TV and doing it with confidence. She didn't act like a victim. She didn't rant or play the sympathy card. Instead, she showed the world what it looks like to fight back with facts and receipts. And that strength, it made people pay attention, especially when old clips resurfaced, showing the host of The View using the Bible to defend the idea of children receiving gender-affirming treatments. In one clip, a host questioned if parents were even smart enough to make decisions about their own kids anymore, saying it felt like the system was taking that power away from families and giving it to politics. Then she pushed back at critics, asking what Bible people were reading, because from her view, God had been very clear the internet didn't hold back. That moment alone had people calling it one of the show's lowest points yet.
It's all women. Yeah. See, this is not black, Asian women. This is all women. Women were not invited to this party. It was a man's world, and we busted our asses to make sure that this was a person's world. So please stop using that phrase and talking about, because you don't understand what you're saying. Mm-hmm. You're saying about yourself that, hey, that's a terrible thing to be. It's not a terrible thing to be. That's why we fought. That's what we were fighting for, so that you could stand in that podium, so that Catherine Jean-Pierre could stand at that podium. So women of all kinds of colors and ilks, wherever they came from, whatever their belief system was, they had the opportunity.
But let's be real, it wasn't the first time The View crossed the line. And sadly, it probably won't be the last. This whole situation, it's kind of their brand at this point. So now the big question, what happens next if the court sides with Karoline Whoopi could be ordered to apologize, publicly pay millions in damages, and maybe even walk away from the show completely? That would be huge. The entire future of The View is hanging by a thread. But this case isn't just about one host or one show. It's about setting a boundary. Karoline is showing that just because someone has a mic and a camera doesn't mean they can say whatever they want without facing consequences. This could be the start of something bigger, the beginning of the end for unchecked media takedowns. And to add fuel to the fire, Karoline supporters are calling out the hosts even harder. One conservative commentator said that most voters completely disagree with the women of The View, calling them out of touch with the majority of Americans, and saying they might want to seek help if they think this is normal behavior. All right, let's rewind for a second, because before we dive into this chaos, we got to ask, how did it even start? How did a 27-year-old political firecracker end up clashing with a bunch of veteran talk show hosts who've been in the game longer than she's been alive? Well, enter Karoline Leavitt. She's bold, she's sharp, and she's not afraid to speak her mind without even stepping foot on The View. She managed to shake things up so badly that Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Sunny Holland were left scrambling. And get this, she didn't need an invite to make an impact. Karoline called them out hard. She exposed the double standards, clapped back at their usual arguments, and basically said what a lot of people have been thinking for a while: the result of firestorm, so much so that now there's talk behind the scenes that ABC might be thinking about cutting the show altogether. Yeah, it's that serious.
I was just in Karoline Leavitt's first briefing as the White House press secretary. Not a surprise, given it was essentially must-see TV during Trump's first term, that this room behind me, the James Brady briefing room, was essentially packed with standing room only around the chairs that you see on TV.
The View is back at it, and this time they've exposed their own hypocrisy in a way that's honestly hard to watch. So here's what went down. Joy Behar made jaws drop when she basically suggested that 27-year-old Karoline Leavitt only landed her role as Trump's press secretary because of her looks. Yeah, the same Joy who's always preaching about women's empowerment and feminism just threw another woman under the bus for being successful. You can't make this stuff up, you.
The inflation executive order the president signed, but egg prices have skyrocketed since President Trump took office. So what specifically is he doing to lower those costs for Americans?
Really glad you brought this up, because there is a lot of reporting out there that is putting the onus on this White House for the increased cost of eggs. I would like to point out to each and every one of you that in 2024, when Joe Biden was in the Oval Office, or upstairs in the residence sleeping, I'm not so sure, egg prices increased 65% in this country. We also have seen the cost of everything, not just eggs. Bacon, groceries, gasoline have increased because of the inflationary policies of the last administration. As far as the egg shortage, what's also contributing to that is that the Biden administration and the Department of Agriculture directed the mass killing of more than 100 million chickens, which has led to a lack of chicken supply in this country, therefore a lack of egg supply, which is leading to the...
And the internet. Oh, it lit up fast. People were not having it. One commentator even said it was disgusting for Joy to imply that Karoline was only hired because Trump saw her as a 10. But let's be real, this isn't new. The View has been going after Karoline for a while now. Why? Because she doesn't fit their mold. She's young, conservative, and not afraid to speak her mind. And instead of engaging with her ideas, they fall back on the same tired tricks, mocking her, questioning her credibility, and trying to reduce her value to her appearance. Joy, with her usual smug attitude, made it pretty obvious that she doesn't believe Karoline earned her spot. Then Whoopi jumped in with her own take, saying Karoline only has a platform because of wokeness. The irony is wild. Basically, it was one big mess, and yeah, the hypocrisy was loud. The View once again showed they're all about supporting women as long as those women agree with them. And honestly, people are over it. One viewer even pointed out how ridiculous it was watching Whoopi try to explain the role of a press secretary to someone who literally was a press secretary. That's next level cringe. Then there's Sunny host, and surprise, she brought race into it like she always does. But Karoline wasn't about to let that slide. She clapped back with a response so sharp. The View's producers probably still haven't recovered. It wasn't just a sassy one-liner. It was a full-blown takedown that exploded online. Karoline didn't sugarcoat anything. She called out The View for exactly what they are, a panel of out-of-touch elites who love to scream feminism until a woman with different opinions shows up. Then it's attack mode. As for Whoopi's whole wokeness comment, Karoline shut that down fast. She made it clear she didn't get where she is by being a token hirier. She got there through hard work. Meanwhile, she called out The View for constantly elevating people based on box checking instead of merit. And then Karoline Leavitt dropped the line that stopped everyone in their tracks. She said The View doesn't really support strong women. They just want women who follow their script. And as far as she's concerned, she's not playing that game. Boom, mic drop. The second that video hit social media, Twitter exploded. Hashtags like #cancel The View and #Karoline Leavitt takes down The View were trending in minutes. And honestly, it's no surprise that moment hit a nerve.